Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, man. How you doing, Coach Mike?
All right. All right. You all came ready to work tonight?
Yep.
That's the right answer. Yeah, like, man, I've been working all day.
You're right.
We got to put in that work, man. We'll get started in a couple minutes. All right, let's get going. Good evening, everyone. This is day 3 of the Revenue Disruptor Estimating Procourse. And hopefully, over the past 2 sessions, you have continued to receive the information, hopefully, review the information. We also have the replays uploaded for day 1 and day 2. Make sure you take time to go back over that information. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot an email over to Michael at michaeldyoung.com. Michael at michaeldyoung.com if you have any questions regarding this information. I realize that I'm taking 28 years of information and feeding it to you in 5 days. So I know it's a lot of information. If you have questions, not sure about certain things, make sure to ask. The last thing I would want you to do is to take all of this information, become overwhelmed, and say, forget it. I'll just find somebody else to do it. I literally just got off another coaching call where this person had the tendency to receive education, to receive information, and then become paralyzed because of the intoxication of the information. Yes, we can become paralyzed by too much information if we're not learning how to take step by step to implement the things that we're learning. So, I would like for you to jot down one thing during day 3, one thing during day 2, day 1 that you would like to put a date on to implement. Say, I want to implement this by this date. Always find yourself creating deadlines. If you do not create a deadline, you'll find yourself continuing to delay action. You will delay action. All right. So if we could get someone to come off mute and give us one major takeaway from day 2, one major takeaway from day 2.
Elevation symbols.
Elevation symbols. All right. What about it?
How to read elevation symbols. That was something I was not necessarily aware of.
Okay.
Because I see those particular symbols all over the sheets all the time. And so just kind of have a reference up to that elevation symbol. At first, I thought we were literally talking about elevations as in heights and this and that, but then I realized we were just talking about like the facade elevation of this east, west, north, south elevation.
Correct.
And then pulling out some of the other. I knew about the other details that you can pull out, so I kind of know where to reference that. But the elevation slide was just the one that was a takeaway for me.
Awesome. That's awesome. Right. So that's growth. Right. So long as we have some growth, we're doing great. Awesome. Anyone else? One takeaway. We can get one more
Double
person.
checking the scale.
Oh, double checking the scale. Ding, 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 ding. Always. This is a rule of thumb for every estimator. Always double check, sometimes triple check your scale. So important. Just like in the field, measure thrice. cut once. Sometimes they say measure twice. No, measure 3 times and then cut 1 time. All right, so you don't have to throw away material or time. All right, you all, let's get to work. We're in day 3, and so today I want to continue talking about takeoff, but we're going to bridge into estimating. All right, we're going to bridge into estimating and putting the numbers together. So today we're doing a little of both. So I'm going to split tonight's session up with takeoff and actually working on the estimate. And so we want to compile our takeoff quantities in a spreadsheet, um, or some type of software. They should say or software, or some type of software. We want to place it in an Excel document or some type of software. Tonight I'm going to demonstrate how you can use software, and then possibly tomorrow I'll show you how we use it in an Excel document. But I want to show you the software side because I know most of you are foreign to the software side. We want to make sure that we're categorizing our takeoffs by trades. I mentioned that in day 1 and day 2. We want to include scope items that's required in the specification to ensure we're capturing all the costs. So that means though we're focused on the drawings to do our quantity survey or quantity takeoff, those terms are used synonymously. We want to also go to the specification, the written specification, to identify are there elements regarding these scope items that I also need to quantify and add dollars to. Very, very important. When we're taking off quantities, we understand that sometimes we may be taking off material, we may be taking off what we say installation or labor, or sometimes we may say, hey, our sub is going to price this, but I do want to identify quantities just so I can check or verify scope. I'm going to say that again. Though we may take off materials, take off installation quantities, and we have these quantities available, sometimes we may not price them internally. Sometimes we're getting subcontractor pricing, but we're utilizing our internal takeoffs as scope comparisons. What I mean by that is I'm able to say, hey, drywall installer, how much square footage of drywall do you have in your number? Tile installer, how much of type 3 tile did you include? Did you also include the epoxy grout? I can start now quantifying and utilizing these items to clarify scope and ensure that they are covering every area and every item that I need in my pricing. So if you're doing takeoff with materials, now we're transitioning from just the takeoff into developing the estimate. You can actually reach out to local suppliers to get material pricing, preferably wholesale suppliers. Most of us are accustomed to retail pricing, right? And that should be a last resort. Everybody shout last resort. Come on, class, everybody shout last resort. I need some more energy than that. Everybody say last resort. I don't know what's going on, but retail pricing should be a last resort. Vis-a-vis Home Depot, Lowe's. You know where I'm going. That's retail pricing. There are suppliers oftentimes that carry the same materials. For instance, lumber. You can go to a lumber specific supply company and order lumber, normally a lot less expensive than Home Depot. Home Depot is retail. All right. Screws. They have suppliers just for screws. So if you're doing a lot of projects and maybe you're doing your own installation, so Golson, as you're doing your window installs and you're putting storefront windows together and you're needing to buy screws, don't run down to Home Depot to get a box of screws. If you're going to continue to do this over and over again, you should be buying a case of screws from the screw supplier. All right. Now, it may be a different brand, and people in the field may have preferences on certain brands because sometimes the head strips easy, sometimes it doesn't thread well. And so sometimes you may need to collaborate with those installers in the field so you make sure it's a win-win for everybody and you're not just looking at price. You don't want your workers frustrated because every time they're trying to place a screw, the head is stripping or those types of things. So always have those conversations. That was just a throw in for free. All right. Make sure to include waste per package quantity. So, for instance, when you start doing detailed takeoffs and you realize you need a box and a half, well, don't just say I'm gonna figure a box and a half, round it up to two because you will buy two, right? If you know you're gonna need extra, sometimes that's a rule of thumb is 10 to 15%, but it depends on what it is. So sometimes it takes time to develop waste factors for your job and understand how much waste to include, but normally 10 to 15% usually covers it unless you have a small quantity. So I'll give you an example. So Doc, just like your restaurant we showed yesterday, and we did the acoustical ceiling tiles, right? It's a small space. And we're going to have a lot of cut tiles, we call it, meaning it's not a full tile that will go into the grid. So that means we're going to waste a lot of tiles. That means I need to maybe have to buy an extra case. If there's 16 pieces in a case and I only need 3 cases, I probably should buy 4 because you can't buy them per piece. So it's things like that that may drive your waste percentage up because you had a low overall quantity. So you have to start thinking about in the field, what are we going to actually purchase when you're putting your estimate together. You also want to include the following with your materials. It's easy to forget sales tax, right? If you're just pricing materials, it's easy to forget sales tax. What about delivery? How's it getting there? I know you're probably picking it up in your truck right now, but guess what? That is a cost. It's an indirect cost, but that is a cost. Your fuel, your mileage. So you may want to think about, how do I cover delivery costs? What about unloading and stocking? If you're in a multi-story building, or maybe you have to park a ways off, maybe it'll take an hour to load your materials, not only from the store, but to the job site. That's time. Time equals money. So you need to start thinking about not only unloading, delivery, but what about stocking? If you're on a 10th floor office building and you have to load the materials on the elevator, how much time is it going to take to stock the job? So those are some costs I often overlook. Here's some additional ones. Credit card surcharges. Where are you covering that, right? And then making sure, of course, you have the right overhead and profit. So when we're talking about developing our estimate, these are some things we want to key in on specifically for materials. Now you say, Mike, why did you place overhead and profit under this material category? Because at times you may want to price your materials differently than your labor. Well, what case would that happen? There may be times, I'm going to say it again, that you may want to price the overhead and profit for your materials different from your labor. Let me give you an example. If you ever work a government job and they have something called ODP or DPO, that's owner direct purchase or direct owner purchase. They use those terms interchangeably, it's the same. What is that? You have potential clients that are sales tax exempt. And I know that the governor just put in a new law regarding how those purchases are made. But for right now, most of these clients are still able to take advantage of sales tax exemption. So they must purchase those materials themselves. So what will happen, they will deduct those materials from your original contract or estimate, right? So those materials will come out. but you're only giving them the materials and the sales tax. You're not giving them the profit. What happens? Now, instead of having a total of maybe 15% profit, because you just took profit and added it from the material down to your labor, maybe now you're looking at 22% profit. And you say, well, am I going to remain competitive at that overall profit margin? So you may say, well, to be more competitive, I want to have an average of 15%. So maybe instead of bidding the job at 15% for my material, I'll reduce my material down to 10% and leave my labor at 15. That's another strategy. There's all types of ways you can break it up. And you're going to say, Michael, how can I do that? I'm going to show you in the software how you can do that tonight. All right? But that's just an example. You want to always think about market-based labor rates and labor classification. So, for instance, if you have a roofer, a carpenter, right, you have all of these labor classifications. Well, you want to make sure that you're using the right labor rate. Now, that labor rate can be what you're paying these individuals, but it could be based on the market. Because I recognize most of us would like to charge our client a little bit more than what we're actually paying out, right? So if I'm paying my carpenter $20 an hour, I really want to charge my client $25 an hour. And that's at the base rate. That's not even including overhead and profit. So maybe I want a little cushion there, right? So I want you to start thinking about, am I still market competitive? Don't just throw numbers out in left field. Oh, I'm going to charge them $50 an hour. Okay, well, will the market bear $50 an hour? So you may need to do some research in your industry for Central Florida to see what market rates are for your labor categories. If you're a roofer, concrete finisher, excavator, machine operator, a crane operator, whatever it is, electrician, you can actually search in Google average labor hour rates in Central Florida, and you will get a rate, and then you'll know if you're within the market. Okay?
Is that Google search rate accurate in your account?
For the most part. I mean, most of the you can probably also search Indeed, but for the most part, AI is becoming a lot more sophisticated now, and between chat and Google, they're getting fairly close. So they're able to pull data from all different types of places to get that, correct data. But I haven't really seen it to be off. Now for you, Dr. Fidel, you're down in South Florida, right? So we know your rates are a little bit higher in South Florida than Central Florida or North Florida. So you may have to be specific to say, hey, in South Florida, what are the rates for, a glazer or for a carpenter or whatever, right? So the more specific you are, you may get better information. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and I've done this in a separate class that's actually on YouTube, is labor burden. Labor burden. Labor burden. I have a class that's available that you can watch on YouTube that shows you how to put your labor burden together. What is that? That is all the taxes, all the benefits that you're paying your staff person. So for an example, we have FUTA tax, SUTA tax, unemployment tax, right? That the employer is paying. What if you give them days off, right? So maybe they have PTO, personal time off. You're paying for that as an employer. So that's a cost. What about medical benefits? Possibly you're paying a portion of that, if not all of it. That is a cost. So what we do, and I explained it in the class, and I don't want to take time to do it in this class. I will send you the link if you need it. We take all of those costs over an annual basis, and we add it to the base rate of the annual salary. Okay, so we add all of these up, and then we divide it. Anybody know the magic number? The number of hours for a full-time person in a year. Anyone know it? Anyone know it? And the answer is 2,080 hours. You should write that down, never forget it. If you ever need to back into taking an annual salary and figure out what's the hourly rate, you divide the annual salary by 2,080 if they're full-time 40 hours a week. If they're part-time 20 hours, it's half of that, 1040. Always remember 2080. So we're going to take their base rate, all of the other benefits that they're getting, plus the tax, and we're adding all of that up on an annual basis, dividing it by 2,080 hours. And we come up with what's called a loaded rate or a burden rate. This is the rate that you should be using to figure out how much your labor costs are. Not what you're paying them. Your loaded or burden rate. Everybody got that? All right, so the next step, again, I taught this in another session. If you need the link, let me know, but it's on the YouTube page. All right, the next thing we want to figure out is how to estimate the unit production rate, So normally we figure, well, how long is this going to take? And we're going to take the total quantity or whatever we calculated and divide it by production rate, and that's going to give us the total hours. So for an example, if we're installing 3,000 square foot of tile with the crew rate of 150 square foot a day, that means they're putting in 150 square foot at the end of 8 hours, right? So that means that crew, we take the 3,000 divided by the 150, and we get 20 days. So now you can start factoring in your schedule based on labor rates. Okay? Now, we have the 20 crew days, right? And we say, well, how many hours is this? We times it by 8, we get 160 crew hours. All right, so what's missing? We need to know the loaded burden rate. So let's just say we have a person, we identified the loaded burden rate is $58 an hour. We know it's 160 hours for 3,000 square feet, right? We started with 3,000 square feet. We realized this crew can get 150 square foot in a day. 160 hours times this average rate. Okay? So here's the labor cost. Boom. This is how we estimate. This is professional estimating. All right? So the question is this correct? Is this correct? Anybody have a guess? Is this correct?
I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Okay. Anybody else? Doc said he didn't see anything wrong with it. Anybody else?
Can you go back to it?
Now this really is a brain pull, and it's challenging. I'm gonna ask you all a question. We're talking about 3,000 square foot of tile, right? We use a rate of $58, and that's loaded, burdened. We have the hours. We know the hours are correct. What about the $58 per hour?
That's the crew hours. That's the average crew hour. That's the average crew hour. Are we saying?
My man thinking. There we go. I like it. I like it.
I
That
was on mute. My bad.
okay? Go ahead, Johnny.
No, he said it, but I was gonna say you don't have the amount of workers in there.
Exactly. So is the $58 an hour based on the average for each person? Because to me, just from first glance, that's high, right? Because that means I'm paying over 100 and some $1,000s a year loaded for if it's one person. That's a lot of money. I don't know any tile installers making that kind of money, right? So the question is, well, how many people is that? Are y'all following me? So we have to decide if we're going to say, hey, we're going to take the total number of hours and use a certain amount. We have to figure out what's the crew made up of. So maybe we average what that rate is, so we come up with a rate that's pretty close to what we will be paying, or we come up with a rate that the market says we can charge. One of the two. Make sense? But either way, we want to always check, hey, what are we charging as a basic rate? Make sense? Good, good, good.
So, but for this example, was that $58 the crew rate, or was that like the individual? Because for that rate per hour, they're saying we can get this many tiles done per hour. They're
Yes,
not telling me how many people it's taking.
it didn't.
They said,
But guess
right.
what? But guess what? If you use $58 an hour, regardless if it's one person or 10, you have to be at $58 per hour, right? So you could back into that number and determine how many what your crew size would be by that number, or you can reverse it and actually come up with the actual rate based on the required crew size. That was some good stuff, man. They don't teach you this stuff in school. I promise you they don't. Okay. All right. Let's look at something else and then we'll go to the nitty gritty with the takeoff. We'll pick back up with takeoff. So when we start looking at labor production rates, we want to make sure, just like what Johnny and Doc referred to, we want to make sure to use the corresponding crew size production rate. Okay? That's really, really important. And not only the production rate, but also the labor rate. All right? That's really, really important. So we have an example here. I put 3 different line items. We have a total quantity. We always need to know that first. What's the total quantity that we took off? What is the rate per hour, meaning how much can be installed per hour? Typically, when I look at these things, I usually like to use a crew size of 1, but sometimes you'll say, well, it always going to take 2 people. Like Pastor Mike, I'm sure there's situations, right? There's certain glass that's so heavy. Maybe well now that they have more tools and devices to use, but there was a time you just had to have somebody else with you, right? There was no trying to do it by yourself. So there may be times where you have to have a 2-person crew or more, and then you have to factor, okay, how much can this 2-person crew install per hour? So you come up with that quantity, right? Either way. Then you figure out, okay, based on the rate, the production rate, how much we're getting installed, you're able to come up with the number of hours. And then you normally, I would say, want to figure the average rate. The average rate. Okay? So that's pretty much how you figured it. Okay? All right. Any questions on that? Any questions on that? Man, this good stuff.
And
Ooh.
just reiterating, these rates is at this point just finding the street values before you even walk into the conversation. You're looking at Google as a primary resource or AI tools to fill in those numbers.
Well, for the most part, I think what'll happen is for you over time you'll start becoming familiar with the rates. Like now, I pretty much know the rates. You know what I'm saying? The more you bid, the more you start working with subs, The more you do post bids, we'll talk about that tomorrow. When you do a post bid and you start asking, hey, what's the rate? Here's another way you'll pick up on this, Doc. When you start placing the subcontractor rate in your contract. Why would I do that? For change orders, right? I want to make sure that I have your rate for change orders before we go to contract. So when we get a change order, you're not trying to rob me and the owner blind by charging $100 an hour. It's like, well, you came up with that. That's not in your bid. You didn't bid it that way. Right? So let's put your hourly rate in your contract right now so we lock that in up front. Right? So when we go to contract and there is a change order, it's already fair, it's already agreed upon. There's no conflict, no disagreements. Okay? That's another way. And so over time, what'll happen as you start receiving this information from subcontracts, you're doing post bids, you're just talking to people, right? You're investigating, you start gathering all this information, you get an idea of what rates are. Of course, they're a lot higher than they used to be, but just think about it now. How much is a helper in any industry making right now? A raw rate, just roughly. Anybody want to guess? Maybe. Somewhere between 15, 20, right? Somebody that really doesn't know anything, they'll help her. $15, $20 an hour is pretty much a raw rate. When you start getting to someone that's more experienced, journeyman, then depending on what they do, right? So roofers typically, it depends what really the location, right? And now that our administration have cracked down on, on having, foreign people here that do not have citizenship, is totally changing the game. And so numbers are really going to start going up, right? Because the workforce is already depleted, and so now people going to have to pay more for good help. So maybe you start seeing, carpenters, roofers, drywall installers, your general trades people, their rates is probably starting at $25 an hour base now. And may go up to like 32 base. That's what they're getting paid. And then when you add the burden, just as a rule of thumb, burden can range anywhere from 25% to 50%, depending on who it is. 25% to 50%, depending on who it is. And I showed you all again in a separate class on how we come up with those numbers. Okay? All right, good stuff. Any more questions on how we work on putting our estimate together?
You said the range is dependent on who it is?
So, yes. So, for instance, I have included for you all in the mentorship program, I actually give you the document where you can calculate it. But for instance, workers' comp rate. Work comp rate for someone that is a project manager versus someone that is a superintendent overseeing the job, right? Those rates are different. Someone that is in the office clerical or salesperson, those rates are different. Someone that is a roofer, those rates are much, much higher than a regular carpenter. So those rates impact your burden. How much PTO they have. Maybe you have someone and it's in your staff manual. If a person's been with you, more than 5 years, maybe they get 2 to 3 weeks vacation. Well, you paying for that. That should be in that burden rate. Whereas a person that is only maybe with you a year or two only get a week or two. So the cost is going to be different for every person that works for you. So you have to try to figure out what is either my crew rate or what is a good average rate that will also be competitive in the market that I can charge my client that will still also cover the majority of my people. Man, this is some good stuff. That boy be teaching, man. My God, y'all got to tell somebody else about this stuff, man. Oh Lord. All right. Any more questions? Ebony, any questions? Glenn, any questions?
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Somewhat unrelated though. If I'm bidding as a GC, when I get bids from subs, if the project doesn't start, say until 6 months or so, one of the challenges I have on the residential side is that those numbers don't really matter
Yep.
until I get to. So, do you then require that of the subs that they guarantee those same rates once the project starts?
Great question. Great question. I had this question before. Um, it's tricky and it depends on your client. Okay? It depends on your client. Government agencies, they want you to lock in the number, period. Why? Because they have a budget they have to stick to. More private developers, private organizations, they have a little bit more wiggle room usually, and so they kind of have, more understanding. Here's the thing you have to do. You have to protect yourself by, number one, understanding what the market says. Are y'all with me? Understand what the market says. What do you mean by that, Michael? Some markets are so volatile that no one will ever hold their number. What do you mean? Let's say when drywall was under what they call allocation or lumber was under allocation. What does that mean? There's a limited supply available, right? And so when it's under allocation, the suppliers will only allocate materials that they are receiving to their top purchasers. So that means everyone else is really having a hard time finding those materials, which will drive the numbers up, right? And so when those types of things are happening in the economy, what occurs is these suppliers will say, Michael, I can't hold my number for a month. I can't even hold it for a week. My price may change next week. So what happens is the supplier will go to the sub and tell them that, and the sub's like, well, what you want me to do? Right? I don't have a crystal ball either. So now you have a lot of tension and pushback on anyone wanting to hold their dates, which now snowballs and affect you. So the reason why I said it depends on your client, you have to have that conversation with the client. You have to educate your client and say, hey, we know that certain materials are under allocation. And I've seen it where it's been drywall, I've seen it where it's been real carpentry, lumber, I've seen it where it's been metals, like for steel, fab, miscellaneous metals, metal studs. All of it's happened at different times. And you have to educate your client and say, hey, this is what's going on. My recommendation is that we put a contingency, we talked about that yesterday, a contingency for the term escalation. 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 So we put a percentage for any material escalation. So we say, hey, owner, we're going to set this money aside just in case pricing increases, because I realize my subcontractor suppliers, they cannot hold their number. We're not trying to bankrupt anyone. Why? This only makes the risk worse. So let me continue to talk, because this is a really good subject. What happens is, let's say you try to force a subcontractor. Well, I wrote you a contract, you have to hold your number. They say, well, I can't hold my number. It can cause me to go bankrupt. What's going to happen? Anybody want to guess what's going to happen?
Put a lien on?
Well, they can't lien anything.
Because they haven't started yet.
Well, not even that. What if they have started and the price went up? They're not going to lien anything. They're not going to be able to commit to the number. Why? Because the material prices just went up. So they don't even have it in their budget, right, to pay for it. They're taking a loss. So if they're taking a loss, if the loss is big enough, anybody want to guess what's going to happen?
Either a loss of quality or delays.
Okay.
They're not going to finish.
They're not going to finish. So all the above. Exactly. They're going to walk off your job. and say, you all can have this. You can have this headache, you can have this job. And some of them will leave money on the table and just say, forget it. Because sometimes the risk is so high, it could be worse than the amount that's due to them in payments. That's why you have to track your pay applications, make sure you're not overpaying your subs. So it's really, really a tricky thing when owners are not flexible with escalation dollars. So again, just to kind of end cap what I was talking about, the best recommendation is number one, understand the market. What's going on globally? How does it impact um, supplier acquisition and demand for materials? If there's, just like around election times, the political seasons, when people don't know what's going to happen, most times there's restrictions on supply. So what people will do is say, hey, I can't guarantee my number. All right, well, I'm placing that as a clarification in my proposal to my client. I know you want me to hold my price for 30 days, but because of these economical factors that are happening, that they most likely are aware of, we can only hold our price for 10 days. Can they respond that fast? Most likely not. But that at least gives me the right and gives me recourse to go back and reprice it if necessary. Okay? So, again, if you run into that situation, it's best to educate the client and say, let's carry escalation dollars for any material increases, especially when we know it's going to happen. If you are the subcontractor, you need to place it in your clarifications in bold print. In bold print. Let's say, for instance, they ask you to hold your price for 60 days. If you think you're going to hold your price for 60 days, this is what my recommendation is for you. Glenn, I hope you're getting this. Glenn, are you in there with the baby? I hope you're getting this, because this is money in your pocket. This is what you need to do. As a subcontractor, if they want you to hold your price for an extreme period of time, more than 30 days, what you can do is say, I'll hold my price for, let's just say 30 days, but if I need to hold it beyond 30 days, add this amount of dollars. So you can place your own escalation number on it, right, in hopes to cover it. The reason why I recommend you doing that is so you don't come off seeming high initially. Now, whoever's reading that say, okay, we have some flexibility now. Now you went on record and say, okay, if it does go beyond 30 days, I have recourse to get this money back. I made you aware. I didn't try to hide it from you. It was in plain sight. But your number, they're going to look at the base number. Everyone always looks at the base number. But at least you have a caveat that says add this amount if it goes beyond 30 days. Ooh, that boy bad. I'm going to toot my own horn. Praise the Lord. All right. That was good stuff. All right, let's go to takeoff. Let's go to takeoff. Now, I want to just kind of go back to the hotel, and then we're going to hit the car wash. All right, so I'm in on screen. So we have the hotel here. There's a couple things that we didn't really cover, and I know we were talking about some of the elevations, sections, and some of the notes. Most people do understand how to read dimensions. 2 foot, 10 inches. Most of us know how to read that. There's another set of lines on these drawings, and they're called column lines. So you notice here the A, B, C, D. Those are just called column lines. Now, really, it's for the purpose of the architect to identify locations of important structural elements or pieces, and it's a way that they can specify a location, right? Usually it's actually on a column, but it doesn't have to be. I'm gonna say that again. Usually it's on an actual column, but it doesn't have to be. So they'll do it in both directions, north and south, east and west. So we have column lines 1 through, on this sheet, it looks like 1 through 19. Okay, that's going north and south. And then we had column lines A through H, okay, going east and west. So column line 1 is north and south, 2 is north and south, H is east and west. So let's say, for instance, if I wanted to identify an area where we had a problem or a conflict, I could say, hey, I want to know whether we need to include this lamp that's adjacent to column line 2, we'll say G2, right? So this is column line, this cross section will be G2. So this is another way you can identify locations on a drawing. Make sense? Everybody understand that? Column lines. All right, good. So as we were talking yesterday, we were looking at, can AI operate in these softwares now? And I said yes. And I showed you the auto count. Keep forgetting where it's at. I showed you the auto count yesterday. Well, also I did find out, I talked to the rep, this try takeoff boost is another way AI is already integrated into this software. And I did add a video in the portal in regards to the features of takeoff boost. So if you want to learn more information about AI and what it can do in this software, there's a video in the portal for you under day 2. I also placed a video in regards to introduction to BIM, building information modeling, in day 2 as well. All right, so we're going to transition somewhat from doing takeoff into estimating, but I want to show you software. I want to show you how fast it can be. So what I did, I connected on-screen takeoff. We have our takeoff that we started on yesterday, and I'm going to show you how we can connect it to QuickBid. This is another software that goes with on-screen takeoff. So already I've connected it in the same takeoff items that we had in on-screen takeoff is now in QuickBid. Now, right now it's called interactive. So when we set up this project on the cover sheet, I had initially it was on the worksheet tab. I had to change it to QuickBid interactive. And now anytime I make a change here, it's going to also go over into QuickBid. So let's do a different wall type. We're going to call it wall type C. And what I'm going to say is this wall type is, let's say it's an interior wall type, so we're good there. Let's say it's 16 foot tall, and we're using, it's 6 inches thick. So we have the length, the surface area in square foot, so that's good, right? And I'm just using that height just so we can see something different. This is something I like to do when I do this as a subcontractor. I actually type the notes based on the wall type plan. Okay. I actually type the note of what it is. So that means 20 gauge, 6 inch CST metal framing, and that's the type of stud And I'm gonna say 5/8" type X drywall, both sides. I'm gonna say full height because sometimes it doesn't go all the way to the deck, it'll go to the ceiling. All right, level for finish, orange peel texture. Let's put some R11 back insulation in there. So I actually put notes in my takeoff so I know what it is. So when it transfers over to quick bid, I can build it. So right here, I'm building an assembly. So this helps me to take off more than one thing at a time. Everybody understand that? Yes, yes? Y'all look so bored. All right. Let's go over here. All right. Now you see it automatically pull type C. Over here, the quick bid, you see it also has the notes because I typed notes this time. Now, it doesn't have quantity yet because we haven't taken off anything. All right, but let's just do something for an example. We're going to go out here to our common spaces and just take off something. Has to be on continuous mode. Now, normally there's a drywall sheet that actually tells you what the wall types are. And we just bypass that step for the sake of time. All right. But we're in our common spaces. We're just going to act like these are all this type of wall. All right. Everybody good with that? All right. So now we have 190 feet, 95 feet, and we have the square footage for one side. So we talked about this yesterday. Ebony was like, hey, you're going to take off the other side? I said I could do that, but I'm going to allow the pricing system to do that for me, and I'm going to show you that here. So you see it pulled it over, the quantity. So now I'm going to open this up. So don't worry about the details on this. I'm just showing you this so you can understand if you're a subcontractor or you want to accurately price things yourself. Maybe you may self-perform it. Maybe you just want to make sure you have a good number in case you don't receive a sub number. Then you would do this for. All right. So we do something called assemblies. So in the system, there are already preloaded assemblies in here. And this was the database that I had. And so if I wanted an interior demising wall, I would just click that. Okay, and it's going to automatically drop down this assembly that I pre-built. Okay. So right now, each item will have the spec section. It will have a description, and it has these codes. So this is how we drop it into QuickBid with these codes, okay? Now notice this particular wall assembly is using 2x4 framing. Am I using 2x4 framing? Yes or no? What was in my notes?
I can't read.
Oh,
It's blurry.
it's blurry. Y'all can't see it. And I don't think I can zoom in anymore. So in my notes, I had called it metal stud framing. I don't think I can zoom in anymore on this. Okay, so instead of using this assembly, I'm going to delete this. And I'm actually going to type in the code. And I just know this by heart because I've been doing this for a while. So we always start with the track. I'm going to go 3 5/8. Oh, we want 6-inch. Track 6-inch, 20 gauge. Now, boom, it drops all my track. It drops my stud, my screws, my pins and loads. And also a labor code called frame wall. So what happens is I need 2 tracks, top and bottom. So I have 2 here. So it's doing the math and it's adding waste. All right. Because right now I have this set up, it's probably set up for 10% waste. So automatically it's giving me the exact quantity of what I need. So this goes back to, hey, if you want to actually price it detail and actually buy out each piece, each item, you can do that in a software like this. My screws, I have 4 screws, 16 inches on center. So every stud is framed at 16 inches on center. Here's the length of studs. Here are the number of screws. I tell this category, well, how many screws in the box and how much the box is going to cost. Then it spits out a number for me. All right, so this is really how detailed these types of systems can be. And you can't really do this. You can, but it's really, really complicated to do this in Excel. All right. So that's why on I think day 1 or 2, I can't remember now, I said you have to think about the end in mind. You have to have the end in mind. How much detail do you need up front? Some of you as a GC, you never will need this amount of detail. But if you listen to Coach Mike, I say you should always try to self-perform something. Why? It's an additional revenue stream. Okay? So going back to this again, I have my track, my studs. What's missing? My drywall, right? So I'm going to add, I forget if it's 5/8X or X5/8. It's X5/8. That's my drywall. So this is, Ebony, to your point, you see how I have 2 layers? I don't know if you can zoom in. I have 2 layers right here. This is picking up both sides now. If I wanted to do this one side, I just change that layer. See, I can change the quantity, boom, right there. If I want to figure 4x12s for my lower half, then I do that, and it's going to actually calculate in a different sheet. It'll tell me how many I need. So I can price my materials just like this. So what I'll do, I'll call the supplier, hey, how much is track going for? It's $533 per thousand, or $5.33 per foot, whatever that is. Whatever the number is there. Okay? Everybody has that. So I'm only, go ahead.
If there's something I'm entering that I have to assume for now, but I want to come back to later, is there a way to create like a task list to better organize what information I need to update?
I would just put it in the notes. And there's also verified. You see that? It's a little check mark right here that you can say, hey, I verified each one of these items is complete. So especially when you're working with a team of other estimators or someone that needs to check it, or you just for your own memory's sake, you can always verify it when it's 100% done and just leave it unchecked if not. That's another way. You can also use the notes, type notes, if you need to go verify something. Yep. So the only other thing I'm missing for this assembly is the texture. And so I need texture on 2 sides of the wall. Now here's where it's different. Do I need texture all the way up to 16 foot? Let's see if y'all know some construction. Do I need texture on the walls a total of 16 feet?
That's up to the ceiling height, right? Up to
Boom! My man. My man, 100 grand. So that may mean, let's say my ceiling height is 10 foot, then I'm going to just put 10 foot on both sides. Right? So over here, I can start pricing my labor. Again, production rates. Here we go. Quantity an hour. So how much of this can a person get done in an hour? So this is where we start getting into rates. That's why it's important for you all to understand that. That's why I taught that. All right. So here's another way I like to teach this. It's really good for you to actually learn some of this stuff yourself so you can check people that like to get over. So I would say, well, how much can I do? I don't do this every day. But if I can install a sheet of drywall in an hour, surely you can. Right? So let's just go back to that. If I'm doing a 4 by 12, that's 48 square feet. All right, so boom, that's 48. That's really 1 an hour. But let's just say it's 2 an hour. Now I'm doing 96. You see how the price changed? Watch this. Show you again. I'm gonna show you again. 48. Boom. It's 35 cents per square foot. But if I can get 2 sheets an hour, I'm at 17 cents a square foot. So I like this software because you can either play with the unit cost, if you know that, or you can play with the production rate. So once you have all of that in, you can actually start totaling everything. So for every condition, they'll give you a total, a base total. Now let's say, hey, I'm going to self-perform drywall, but everything else I'm subbing out. I can add my sub quotes here if I want and put just a net markup on them if I want to do that. Okay. If I
Do you
need,
have to hard code all of your labor rates, or is
Sa-
there a way to store?
oh yeah, it's a way to store it. Yes. So that's correct. Let me see. Now it's messing with my memory. Let me see if I can try to remember how to do that. I think you have to go into a different part of the system. But yeah, you can actually update all your labor rates. I would have to go back in there and try to figure it out. Let's see. Payroll classes. So under payroll classes in this database, now everybody's database won't look like this, but in this database you will have every type of installer, and you will actually go through this, and if they're a union, you may have a rate. If they're a sub, they may have a rate. If they're working for you, open shop, you have the base rate, any fees, insurance, tax, or total labor burden. You can just put a number, whatever that is there, and then boom, it gives you the hourly rate. So anytime it's using this classification on that code, it's going to default to that rate. So this is advanced estimating, and this is what all the subcontractors do. Okay, every subcontractor does this in some type of form or fashion. Every professional one. Let me be specific, okay? Right, because this is how we drill down on getting the actual numbers. All right. So in this markup screen, remember I was telling you in the slides you need to figure out how to price stocking, cleanup, supervision. You can actually put a percentage based on materials or based on labor or based on subs. Here's your material escalation if you want to break it out and just say, hey, I have some areas that I need to put escalation on. You can break it out on that. If you're traveling out of town, you need to add per diem. You can add that, and then you have a separate breakout for overhead and profit. Okay, so this is a great way to look at the overall setup of your system. So this is what software gets you. Excel, it's really hard to set up an Excel to be dynamic in this way. You can get a lot of this in Excel, but to go back and forth between productions, each and every like piece of material, you can't really, it's really difficult to do that in Excel. If you ever want to look at your entire material list, right, I can just print this out and send this over to a supplier and say, hey, this is my job, give me the pricing. This is what we used to do. Before I turned in the bid, I will print this report and say, hey, this is what my job's gonna have, give me pricing, I'll update my material costs. Any waste, I update my waste, whatever that is, right? So this is where I was going in, like this fastener, it says 1.14 boxes. Nope, I'm going to buy 2. So now I just update it, and because it went to 2 boxes, look at the waste number. I wouldn't have figured that off the top of my head. So this gives you more accuracy, all right? Same thing on the labor. If I wanted to just look specifically on my labor numbers and not go, based on an assembly, I just want to look at each line item and just make sure I'm doing it correctly and figuring the right production rates. I would just look at that tab. Okay, you can do payroll this way too. So these are the ones that show up under this job. So right now it's a base rate. The drywall hanger is at 17, so let's take that up to 25. So we're going to take it up 25 base rate and a 35% burden. So the true burden rate is 33.75. Let's see how it changes the number. Added $1,000 to it. See, you can't do it that quick in Excel, right? You can't move that fast in Excel. Okay. All right. How many of you all enjoyed that? That was good, right?
Good information, Coach. A lot of information, Coach.
Hey, man. I'm going to try my best to deliver what I said, okay?
Hey, so let me ask you a question. Is at a point, though, the hands-on portion of this, we have to have a software in order to practice this, to put it into practice.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps coming back to that level of software as we move into the estimating part. We have to have something in here, and even if after the class we want to go back and fiddle with something, we basically have to have the software.
Yeah, you can try. So you can always request trials.
Right?
Yeah, you can always request trials. Most times, most of the more expensive ones, they won't allow you a trial more than a week.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the glass job. I know Pastor Mike has been waiting on this. I'll try to give him some time. Pastor Mike, you ready?
Yes, sir. Let's hit it. Yes, sir. Let's hit it.
All right. So I loaded your job. I do not have the floor plans. We just have the elevations.
Okay.
Okay. So again, grid lines, column lines up top. We have some dimensions on it. It says the scale. We always want to check that first. 1/8 inch equals a foot. How can we check the scale, you all? This is a quiz from day 2. You all remember?
The doorway.
Oh, Ebony, come through. Anybody else? What about the actual dimension? All right. Usually the longer the dimension, the better. So it's pretty close, right? So it looks like our scale is correct. So we want to add a condition. We see some, this is storefront glass. We see some windows. Now, there's a couple ways you can look at taking this off. We normally take off windows by square footage. So I'm going to do area. Okay, so I could do area and say storefront. If I can, yeah, I spell it right. Storefront type C. So we have the designations that are on the windows, C, D, C, C. So we can take out the area. We can take out the perimeter as a second number, and just in case there's blocking behind it or something else, or caulk. We can pull our caulk number by picking up perimeter. All right. Here's another way we can do this. Let's just call it type C. We can also actually put the actual size in and call it a count. So instead of maybe doing it by square footage, I can say count and put in the height, which I don't really know what that is yet. Hold on. let's just figure it's probably 10 foot. Yep, 10. Well, 10.8 is up to this top,
just 10
to
foot,
that
10 foot,
to that canopy,
yeah, yeah.
and it's probably 12. So if I want to take it off by count, the height is 10 foot, the width is 12. So I have each, but I can also do a surface single width side square footage. I also can do perimeter. So now I can do either way. So for some reason, that's because of the single width side. I don't know why. Oh, that's because of the square. Sometimes when you take off counts and you tell it to be a square, it's just gonna show up like that. So just ignore it. It's not matching up. So I can do it that way, or I can do it this way. And now sometimes you have to be careful, because if I'm not precise, and the dimension is down at the bottom. I'm not sure if you all can see down here where it says length at the bottom. It's telling me where I'm at. So I can just kind of gauge it by that also. So I should have the same number either way. So that's just two different methods. Why is this not showing up? Now notice the perimeter on this one showed up different. So you just have to be careful with that and kind of figure out, okay, what's the best method for this? So I think there is a Windows.
So Mike, let me ask a question right quick, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So now, okay, just off the start, I see you with. Is it better to go to the Windows schedule?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just been doing this so long, it's like innate for me. You know, either way.
Okay.
So either way, like I can just start. So what I would do, and you can make your own practice. If you want to go to the Windows schedule first, great. You're probably going to get the correct information that way, right?
Yeah, and the reason why I ask you, because I like you navigate through that part real quick. That
Right.
part will confuse me. I go straight to the window door schedule and
Yeah.
take those measurements.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we want to be able to do it both ways, and
Right.
and a good reason is to double check to make sure there's no conflicts.
Okay, I got you.
So regardless which direction you go, start with, whether you're starting with the schedule or you're starting with the elevations, that's a perfect way to make sure there's no conflicts. Because
Gotcha.
if there's a conflict, what are we doing, class?
All right, fine.
There we go. All right, so here's unit type C. It's giving us more detail. This giving us a lot of detail,
Exactly.
right? So this is where I will put in the notes. It's asking for a Carnier 4150. No, that's 451 T-VG, and that's the frame, and it's asking.
Yeah, that's a little.
Yep. And we have clear anodized. Oh no, that's clear insulated. So that's the type of glazing. What's missing from this information?
As far as what you said was missing?
Yeah. There's no other values, right, for the glass. It is tempered.
It's those should be those are going to be. I saw those somewhere. I think those are in the notes though, Mike. Right?
Okay. I mean that would be the next place to go look, right? So that's something else we would go look for. So.
Because it's gonna say in the notes, I think it's gonna say clear temper,
Mm-hmm.
or IG insulated glass unit, which is tempered. Yeah.
All right, so the glass half-inch thick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I would say this, so we can easily pull square footage, but as a subcontractor, I would be looking at how much frame do I have, right? So maybe as a window subcontractor, I'm going to do something different. So I can do it two ways. I can figure out a each and then manually just put in I have how much framing I have in this window. What's the linear footage of framing?
You saying what's the square feet of this one?
The linear footage of framing.
Oh,
So we have, let's just do it real quick. 10,
uh,
10, 10, 10. So that's 40 plus 12, 12, 12. We're going to just count the overlap. So we have 40 plus 36. That's 76 linear feet of framing for each one of these. So if I'm a window installer, I'm not just figuring as a GC. I'm just figuring counting this square footage and I'm putting square foot price on it. As a window installer, I need to know how many frames. I need how much rubber gasket I need. I need to know how much caulk I need. I need to know how many screws, right, to go into the floor and the walls. Like, what is the spacing for the screws? What type of screws? So I'm going to put all that in my notes because I'm going to build an assembly. I don't know. Let's just call it 12 inches on center. I'm going to build an assembly for this. Now we talk. Now we're getting in some nitty gritty estimating right here. Get it? Now some of your. Go ahead.
What's in that assembly you just built? What did you add? Because couldn't make it out.
Yeah, I was just putting some notes in there. I just said linear foot of framing. So I know for each one of these C-type conditions, I have 76 linear foot of framing. I put screws spaced at 12 inches on center, and that should be at perimeter. Because
so
it's
do you? So if you go 12, so can you actually come three off jam 12 on center on that mic or not?
say that
Or
one.
just 12 on center, huh?
You
I
could,
just
no,
want to
you
answer.
can. I mean, you can do it however you need it, right?
Okay,
You're gonna tell it how you want it. You know what I'm
I
saying?
got you.
So
Yeah.
you're just gonna put that in the notes, and the reason why is when we go to price it, when I build my
Okay.
assembly, I'm gonna remember how to do it.
Got you.
So if I go over here to quick bid now, it didn't pull over. Here it is, right? So it's in here. It's the next one. So my notes are going to transfer over. So when I start building this, it's going to build exactly how I want. I don't think I have a window assembly in here. Nope. So I would have to actually create and build one in here. But basically, let's say for instance the caulk. And I wanted to, my caulk is going to be at the perimeter. So my perimeter condition I already know is 48 feet. So I can either hard type that, or I can just, go back and put like point one in here. I can delete this and put a 0.1. Whatever's going to make the number work.
Gotcha.
Now, what some people like to do, let's say 0.3. Yeah, that's pretty close. Let's do 0.4. So what some people like to do, let's say once we had this assembly built, I can go back in the on screen and keep adding to it, and it's just gonna add automatically price everything. You follow what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's gonna continue to price everything as I continue to do my takeoff.
And you would build an assembly for the doors as well.
Yep, I'll build the assembly for everything. To me, there's no other way. You know, when you're a sub, you want to be as detailed as possible so you know exactly what you need on the job. So, you know, for the same thing for you, Ebony, like if you ever decide that you're going to provide materials for a sub, right, a labor sub, you still want to be able to have this flexibility as well because they're just going to tell you what they need, and now you're at their mercy. Because they're going to, oh, we talked about this the other day. Oh, boss, I need 4 more bags of mud. And you're like, well, I just brought you 4 bags of mud. Where did it go? It went to their other job site. So this is F. So you can take it off however you feel more comfortable that it's going to be accurate. You can take that, off and just label it and name it.
Right.
Now the door, like this piece of storefront that has the door, I will of course take all the glazing off separate from the door. I wouldn't include it.
So you wouldn't include the door light for that door in there? No.
I would do it separate, but I mean
Right,
I'm not
right.
the expert at glazing takeoff, but I would do it separate. I would do something like
Right.
I would do something like this.
I got you. And do the whole door separate.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what yeah, okay. Because that's a different pricing anyway.
Correct. Yep. So like with the doors, you can start adding different hardware. You know, I actually used to install doors and hardware. So, in my system, so this not updated, but I can actually list all the different types of hardware, and I would have it under here. It doesn't look
Right.
like this is a updated database. Let's see what this says. Oh yeah, so this was a holocore door. I added a lock, some nails, casing. So you can build your assembly however you want, but you see it continues to keep bringing all this stuff over. So I think for you all, you probably want to start thinking about, hey, how do we want to start working on these estimates, and how detailed do we really need it? Do we want this level of detail or not?
Yeah. Hey, Fidel, hey, Fidel, you hear me, right?
Yes, I can. I got you.
I think the most important thing for us right now, we're gonna have to, one of us, even me too, because I need it in my own office. I'm gonna have to get an updated software because we can't miss. Like Mike is saying, we can't. Hey, Mike, go back to. Let me show you something too, Coach Mike. Go back to the window schedule right quick. Let me show you something so I can show Fidel at the same time, sir.
All right, is there a certain part you want to go look at?
Yeah, go. Okay, look at the window schedule where it says A and B. You see A and B?
Yeah.
Okay, for instance, now they're saying A and B storefront, right, Mike? Right Right there at the bottom, sir. Look at the bottom where it says window tint storefront.
Yeah.
Window unit storefront A and B.
Yeah. So B is
Now
the
look.
one up on the up higher. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but look at the height on B.
Right.
So automatically, when I see the height, bing, the normal height for storefront is 1012. You can go to 14, but it has to be still enforced.
Okay.
You cannot go to 23. So immediately, I came back, Fidel, remember I called you and said, okay, that has to be curtain wall,
Well,
right?
or does it? Or can you fasten this inside a steel tube frame?
No, this right here, if this, okay, how they have this sitting on a straight wall, into it, what you mean into a steel tube frame?
Let's say, well, this is where I will go to the structural drawing to see if they have any additional support systems.
Okay, yeah. Now what happened? What happened is that I did was what was called a phone RFI. So what I did was
Okay.
called the general contractor.
Okay.
Coach
Okay.
Mike,
Mm-hmm.
you got me?
Yeah.
And explained to him what was going on. So he said, well, hey, hold on, let me get with the architect and see if we can put a slab at each level and make it a storefront. You can do that. Other than that, because now that curtain wall, bidding that at a curtain wall changes that price.
Yeah, but putting a slab there may also change the price too. So now they got to go through this whole pricing exercise with different subcontractors to cover that cost. So yeah. I mean, we deal with this all the time. But that's where I would go. I mean, the architect and engineer, they would normally already know this. So I'll be surprised they didn't account for it some other kind of way. But it's possible. I mean, this is a car wash, so it's possible that they didn't, but normally they do.
Okay.
But
Yeah, because he definitely wasn't. He thought we can throw that storefront at 23 feet up there.
okay, yeah. So normally what they'll do, sometimes they can end up putting some tube steel framing here and across the head. Normally they'll do that where you can actually fasten to, and then the wind load now only impacts the internal members. So it just depends on engineering, and sometimes Carnier, you can work with them to find out, hey, can you all do engineering for this or not?
Got you.
Yeah, but that's a good catch for sure.
Now, so let me ask you this question too. Now, so you just said you can do it by either way, but I do it by for instance, I just do it by count. Like I count the number of C frames, A frames, B frames, C frames, and do the linear feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put it in like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much how.
It's the same thing.
Just count.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. So for you, that's what I'm saying. Like when you first get started, unless you just have money like that, you don't have to buy this stuff. But when you start getting rolling, you get more and more bids happening. At some point, you got to figure out, I need more organization. I need more, a better way to transfer information. So,
Right.
so whoever needs to review, sign off on it, they're getting the information, they're back checking everything. So everything is teed up for construction if and when we get this project. So that is like the whole mindset and process behind it. Again, I mentioned this yesterday. When you're looking at software, you always want to do an analysis. What is the time savings compared to the software cost, right? If the software cost is more expensive than the time savings, it doesn't make sense. But if it's close, it does make sense. Why? Because you're going to be more efficient. You're going to pick up time to do other things, and you're pretty much paying the same thing anyway. So why not benefit and pick up more time where you can do more things? Okay. So I will only say do not go with software when it's really, the software is just way more expensive than the time you're going to pick up. But I always recommend doing an analysis for that. All right. So we're still talking about how we price things. Now this one I can blow up. Now we're talking about how we price things. So if you're not fortunate enough or able to buy software, you can always use Excel. Okay, so you can actually export your quantities from on screen or any other software. You can export it into Excel. So normally you'll end up, I hate these. You'll end up with, these quantities with your notes, right? You'll end up with something like that. And then you can end up placing your own price. Now, as a GC, normally I'm putting my total labor and material together. You all just saw something that was contrastly different in QuickBid where I'm breaking out everything. And it depends on the level of information you need. That's why I always say, keep the end in mind, right? I didn't need to spend time breaking out and figuring out how many loads I got to bring out here and all that and how many labor hours. And I didn't really need that. I just need the price for this. So as long as I have pricing to cover my quantity, I could just drop that in. Now, this spreadsheet is set up where I can toggle between scope that is included or not included. So let's say, for example, normally when I start a job, all of these are no's, okay? And I'm going to actually come in here and put numbers on all my quantities based on historical data, information I know about the market, right? Maybe sub numbers I received or kind of have an idea on past jobs. I'm gonna put in my plug number first. So normally when I do my quantity survey, drop it in Excel, run all of my unit pricing, okay? Once I do that, if I do get a sub, like on this job, then I'm going to change my scope and say, yes, they have included it, right? So anything they didn't include, I'm going to keep it as a no. So this should be no. Now, what that allows me to do is to scope anything that's missing. So they didn't include this dirt at the drain field. Now I at least have a plug number for it. You should be doing this with all your estimates, especially as a GC. That's the importance of doing your own takeoff. You're now able to catch things that subs may not cover. So you say, well, Michael, how did you know they didn't cover it? I called them. I reviewed their estimate. I had my own takeoff, and I say, hey, did you include this? Did you include this? Matter of fact, what you can do, I'll show you something quick that you can also do when you have your own takeoff. You can insert two items, two columns here, and just say yes, no. And you can send this over to them. You can print this out and just send this over to them and say, hey, did you include these items? Check mark yes, check mark no. And now you have a written document whether they included it or not. And then you just put it in your sheet. Okay? So that's another really easy way to confirm you have the scope that's needed. Now, when we start talking about pricing, overhead, contingencies, we have all that. So in this spreadsheet, which will also it's also in the portal, it's called Estimate Template. Of course, we have the total of the subcontractor dollars. We have GCs, we have contingency, and whatever your fee want to be in your insurance. Over here on the GC tab, you can kind of see a list of items that we normally include for general conditions. So normally up here I place like the number, how long the job is going to be. All right, and then you can factor in the time that's required for your staff and anything else you need on the job. So this is pretty comprehensive. So it's not a lot of things that you would have to guess or think that's missing on this. So you'll have this as well. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is what we call a bid tabulation. So we take our same scope, and I taught this in a separate class as well. We take our same scope that we just did all our takeoff on. We drop all of our takeoff items in this same bid tabulation. This is where I kind of did include it or exclude instead of yes or no. Included, excluded. I'll just grab this, do a do a print screen or PDF screen of, this selection of these cells, and I'll send it to them. I'll have my own numbers in here, and then I have my different subs. Okay, did they include it? Did they exclude it? Let's say somebody didn't include something. I'll say, give me a price for it. So then I can compare apples to apples across the board, right? So anyone that excluded something, I can't compare their number to someone else. Matter of fact, I could try to put my plug number in, but what's the risk of me putting my own plug number? Anybody want to guess? Let's say this company excluded these items here. And let's say I had my own internal numbers for that item. I could plug it just to see apples to apples if they're comparable to this other company. But what's the risk? Anybody want to guess what the risk is? The risk would be that I have to find somebody to do it at my number. And guess what? Will that interfere with the other subcontractor doing their work just because they didn't give me a number? So the first thing you want to do is ask them to give you a price for what's missing. Say, hey, this was something you were supposed to price. Can you give me a price for it? So do that first. And then your last resort is to use your own plug number to cover it. Right? At least you get a budget. You can get something turned in to the owner. You at least have something to compare to even see if they're low. Okay, so I like to make sure we're doing bid tabulations for all our trades of work. So you can do that for every division, every trade that you have. All right. But that's the difference of using like an Excel document. You could come in here and break all these items out by material and labor. You can do that. But now you got to create a whole bunch of more formulas. Okay, so if you're not good at Excel, you probably will most likely want the software to do it. Anybody have questions on that?
No, sir.
Yeah. So I could come in here and say material costs, labor costs, and this is going to be total costs. And I could just have a breakout on material for each one of these if I wanted to do it that way. But it has to be a purpose, a reason why you're doing it that way. Makes sense? All right. Any questions? Any questions? I have one more thing I want to show you. We'll be done for tonight if there are no questions. All right, y'all shake it off. Just one more thing. Just one more. Y'all good? Just one more thing. All right. I know you all probably be ready to go to sleep when you're done with this class. All right, let me show you one more thing. All right, this good stuff. Okay, so this is in the portal as well. This big boy stuff, big girl stuff. All right, so this is the construction overhead calculator. So you know how some of you charge overhead and profit, but most of you all don't know what your overhead costs are.
Right.
So how do you know what percentage to charge for your overhead? Okay, so I'm gonna show you. Anybody want to see it? Anybody? Yes. All right. So what you want to do, if you don't already have this in your financial statements, hopefully that's what you want to aim for, that you can pull these numbers directly from your financial statements, get with your bookkeeper, your CPA, right? And I've given you a pretty common list. Now this is overhead. I'm not going to teach you financial statements tonight, but this is overhead. This means anything that's not specifically related to the project. All right? Anything that's not specifically related to the project. This is overhead. Anything related to the project goes into something called COGS. Anybody have heard of that before?
Yes.
Yes, cost of goods sold. So that's project specific. All right? We're not talking about anything project specific, just pure overhead. So office rent, utilities, office supplies, salaries. Watch this, y'all. Only administrative staff, no project cost payroll. So project cost payroll goes over here in your COGS. Are y'all with me? Yes, yes?
Yes.
All right. Payroll taxes specifically to this salary. All right, company paid benefits, health, dental, vision, whatever that is. Your insurance. Okay, now some people will say, well, isn't that part of COGS? Yes, it can be. So if you want to allocate some of this to your COGS, do that. If not, just drop it under overhead. Okay? You can do it either way. Legal and accounting fees, marketing, advertising. It's pretty exhaustive list. So I want you to go through and think of all of these items, and maybe you have a few more, okay, that you have. Plug it into this spreadsheet for the total year, the annual. Or if you have monthly, you can do it that way. You can back into it. What's the total for the year? Right? So then you want to look at what's your projected annual revenue. What's your projected annual revenue? So if your projected annual revenue is 500,000, I hate when this thing does this. Your overhead is 31% based on rule of thumb. If your revenues are under $1 million, your overhead should be between 8 and 15%. Everybody see that?
Yes.
You sound so enthused. All right, your revenues between 1 million and 5, it should be between 7 and 12. 5 million to 20 million, between 5 and 8. Okay? If you ever get to 6, that's the sweet spot. So if I had to back into it,
I'm sorry, when you get to six, which six referring to
6%
6%? Okay.
overhead. That's always should be a goal. Most people nowadays, they struggle around about 9 or 10. If you're over 15, that is an indicator either you have your overheads running too high or your revenues you don't have enough. Now you have to make that determination, right? Because sometimes you say, hey, there's nothing here I can cut. But if it's too high, I'm looking in my overhead to see where I'm gonna cut first. Then I'm like, hey, well, I have to pay rent. You know, I can't really reduce my utilities. Maybe I need to look for a different cell phone company, or maybe I need to, see what I can reduce. If I can't reduce anything, that means I have to get my revenues up. I have to. All right. So this is not a financial class. This is more so about understanding if you're going to charge overhead, charge profit, and you're going to place a percentage in your estimate for that. You need to know, well, how you're coming up with that number, that percentage. Where's that coming from? It should directly come from here. Look at that. Man, that would be nice. Okay. Everybody understand? Everybody understand?
Yes.
All right. Cool.
You said you're gonna, I know we have that in our,
Yes, this is in the portal.
you gonna send it or you just gonna?
It's in the portal. It's already there. It's been there. This is in the portal. In the specific portal for this estimating Procourse. So when you log into the Procourse, you're going to go into the estimating tab. You're going to see forms and checklists. And it's in there. It's going to say construction overhead items. All right, questions? Any questions? No questions? Ebony? No questions? I filled you up today. Who's on iPhone? I'm not sure who iPhone user is. Is that I'm not sure who iPhone user. Announce yourself.
Telling me.
No, I see you. Yeah, I saw you just got off. I don't know who that is. All right, I'm coming to search you, iPhone user.
It's probably me, like Pastor Mike, it's Marcus.
Oh, what's up, Marcus?
Man, how you doing?
All right. Okay, cool. If there's no questions, then tomorrow I'll recap anything you all want me to cover. So if there's more takeoff stuff you want me to cover, more estimating things you want to cover, think about it tonight. Think about it in the morning. Shoot me an email. Shoot me a text. Let me know, hey, Michael, can you cover this? And I'll make sure to cover it tomorrow. Tomorrow we have, you think the past 2 nights was a lot of content. Tomorrow I'm covering how to set up a bid manual. So from instruction to bidders, throughout putting your schedule together, putting all your documents together. We're putting all of that together, so I have a lot of slides to cover to kind of explain that process. And then we'll do a little bit of GMP and how to put the GMP together. And then Friday, we'll finalize GMP and recap anything else you all want to go over. Okay? So make sure you kind of think about the process, maybe anything that didn't stick, any questions regards to doing takeoff that you have specifically, and we can show you that, okay? Awesome. So as it is my custom, let me pray over you as we leave. Lord, we say thank you for this opportunity to learn more about estimating. I pray that you will help each and every person that's on this live and also that may watch this replay to have understanding. I pray that you will continue to increase their capacity to grow and learn and make this easy for them. I pray that you will bring the right people in their lives to help them to get to their next step. And I pray sweet peace over them as they rest tonight, that they will be strengthened to do this one more time tomorrow. And we just say thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, God bless you all. All right, have a good night.
Bless you. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right.